Men typically do not style their hair as much as women do. What is up, Flockers? That is my fellow Lockers and aspiring Lockers. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some reasons why locks may have thinning issues, as well as some tips to possibly care for that thinning or hair loss in those areas. So stick around. First thing on my list of reasons why your locks may be thinning is because of traction alopecia. I'm sure that a lot of us have heard of traction alopecia before. It's a term that is thrown around a lot in the lock community, or just in the hair community, natural hair community, or maybe just in the beauty community in general. But traction alopecia is definitely a reason that could be causing thinning. A lot of times when we talk about traction alopecia, we're talking about pulling your hair too tightly when you do possibly like your ponytails, if you're pulling your hair super tight, or if you're cornrowing your hair, or twisting it, you're twisting it super tight to the scalp. Now, everybody knows that whether you have locks or loose natural hair or permed hair, whatever it is, when you do a style, you want it to look nice. You want it to look the best that it possibly can. Most people don't go into a style with the thought process of just give it a messy bun type look or feel. You go into it wanting it to look nice, especially if you're going to an event. Now, with that said, I think you can find a happy medium of putting enough tension on your hair or your locks so that you get the style that you're going for, but without doing it so tight that you are pulling your ancestors through your scalp and that you are creating this type of facelift to where it hurts to make any type of movements or anything like that, where if you blink, you're in trouble. Also, this isn't exactly traction alopecia, but it also deals with thinning of locks. Another reason is that you could be putting on your elastic bands too tight or too often. As your locks get longer, some people like to style them more. Some people maybe lazy lockers and just like to throw it up in a ponytail or a bun all the time, which is fine. Do what you want to do at the end of the day. But if you're constantly putting an elastic band in the same place on your hair every single day and it just sits there, or you're doing styles where you're doing 2-strand twist or braids and you're leaving elastic bands at the ends for days or weeks at a time and they're tight, eventually it's going to eat into the lock and that pressure is going to wear away at the lock. And then of course, when you take it out, sometimes you have some hairs that get rolled up in the elastic bands and can snag. Over time, that can lead to thinning. And you may think, okay, well, I've done styles where I've had elastic bands at the ends and stuff like that, and I haven't had any issues with that. I'm not saying that's an immediate issue. It's not something that you're gonna see overnight most of the time. It's something that happens progressively with time. If you're constantly putting rubber bands on the ends of your hair or tying your hair up all the time, over time, you probably will start to see thinning. Now, this doesn't apply to everyone. Some people have super thick hair and it's fortified, and no matter what they do to it, they got that Samson and Delilah hair where no matter what you do to it, it's gonna be fine as long as you don't cut it. All right, something else that causes traction alopecia is retwisting or retying your hair too often and too tightly. Now, a lot of people here on YouTube will tell you don't retie your hair too often, don't retwist your hair too often. And that is so true in the sense that you have to do it at some point when it's necessary for your maintenance. But I've known people that anytime they go to an event, whether it's going to church or going out to dinner or a special event, that they'll retie or retwist the perimeter of their hair. They might not touch the rest, but they get that part that can be seen. And although, again, you want to look super pristine and crisp and everything be in its place, over time, when you're constantly doing that and manipulating your hair, instead of waiting 6 weeks, doing it every 2 weeks or every week and a half so that your edges look nice, eventually that's going to possibly lead to traction alopecia. Not for everyone, but it could possibly lead to traction alopecia and your hairline starting to recede if you're constantly pulling that wear and tear on your hair. Something else that may not be a popular opinion, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyways. I know that right now in the current environment lately, it's been really popular to lay those edges, and I know some women will swear by laying those edges, and some people can probably slay them edges every day and have no residual effects and no problems with it. But just think about it. The same product that you're putting on your edges to slick it down and have it look slick and nice and do your swoops and your designs, would you put that same product throughout your entire head? Would you coat your whole head in it? Because that's like the equivalent of coating your head in Vaseline or petroleum gel. Like, that's the same thing, Vaseline, petroleum gel. Y'all get what I'm saying though. Typically the stuff that you put on your edges, I'm guessing is some type of gel, something that has some serious hold, something that you would not feel comfortable putting on the rest of your head. So just think about it. Unless your baby hairs and your wispies or your flyaways, whatever you want to call them, unless they're expendable to you and you're not really caring about them and what may, then just take that in consideration and think about it. Would you put it on the rest of your hair? And why wouldn't you put it on the rest of your hair? Because if you're worried that it might damage the rest of your hair, what do you think it's doing to your edges? And just a side note, I've heard people in different comments, not my comments, but in general in the world, in person and on YouTube and other forums and stuff, say that men always seem to have the prettiest hair and the longest, most luscious hair, and why are they blessed with? I don't know if that's a genetic thing, but I have a theory, and it could be wrong, it could be right, I don't know. But I feel like, now hear me out on this one, I feel like men typically do not style their hair as much as women do. I'm not saying every man, but I think in general, men don't typically manipulate their hair as much as women do. Men aren't typically trying to style their hair as much as women do. They're probably not trying to throw their hair up in a ponytail as soon as they have, 5 inches of hair. Whereas I know for a lot of women, if you start out with short locks, the moment that you can pull your hair back up into a ponytail, whether all of your locks are fitting in there or not, you might be rocking ponytails, or you might decide to start rocking high buns and stuff like that. And now, although it may be cute and you're like, oh, I can get my little, high pony or whatever, just remember, anytime you're pulling and doing styles, you're putting traction on your hair. And especially when it's shorter, because you're probably having to pull your hair tighter in order to get it up in the style for the high pony or the whatever you're doing. I think that a lot of times men, when it's not genetic, I'm talking about strictly what you're doing to your hair or not doing to your hair, I think that men typically have easier times with their journeys than some women, because of the fact that typically men are not manipulating their hair as often and as much as women do. And we're not throwing our hair up as often and as soon as women do. I do have a friend, if you went back, or if you watched the video that I did where my friend who had locks for 10 years and then ended up shaving his head off, that interview that I did with him, he's someone that every time he would go to get his hair retwisted, pretty much he would get a style put in his hair, whether it was barrel twist or whatever. And so I'm not saying don't style your hair, but I'm saying styling your hair on top of a retwist or a retie every single time is just extra manipulation that's going to potentially add to thinning of your locks or a possible receding hairline. And so he did start having thinning in his locks from rubber bands being on the ends and things of that nature. He still had a beautiful head of locks, but it did attribute to some thinning. It attributed to some of his hairline being pushed back over time because he was always getting these super tight styles on top of already having his hair super tight retwisted. And so it just, over time, it wasn't a good look. And another thing that I think leads to thinning of locks is threefold. I think it can be genetics, I think it can be hormonal, or it can be dietary. Now, when it comes to genetics, I don't really feel like there's that much that you can do to it. Maybe there's some things that you can do to help it from further exacerbating the problem. But when it's genetic, I don't know that you can fully stop it. But there are some people that just genetically, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's from the mother's side of the family, that if there's balding or alopecia or things of that nature, that genetically that's passed down from the mother's side. When it comes to dietary, there is a lot of research that shows that what we put into our bodies directly affects our hair, our skin, and our nails. And so it could be possibly what you're eating and what you're putting into your body and the nutrients that you aren't getting that could lead to thinning or hair loss. And of course, there's the hormonal side of things. Women who are pregnant or who have given birth, there are times that hair loss is associated with that, hair thinning, the change of texture of your hair. So those are all things that can also play a part in hair thinning and hair loss. So quickly, some tips for how to help or minimize hair thinning and hair loss. The first thing is obviously to reduce the amount of styling that you're doing. If you're doing your hair daily, try to reduce it to every other day or twice a week. And in that, when you're doing your styles, again, try not to pull them so tight. Yes, you want it to last for a long time. Yes, you want it to look like you've got every single hair possible snatched up in those locks, but in the long run, it may be doing more damage than it is in the temporary fuss and fuss of looking good for that night or for that week or for that event. Another tip that I have is to switch up things that you use on your hair. So don't always use head wraps every single day, because if you have a head wrap on, it's gonna have tension in the same spot. Or don't always put your hair up in a ponytail, because that ponytail holder is gonna be in that same spot every single day. Or don't always cornrow your hair, or always flat twist your hair. So switch up. If you are gonna be manipulating your hair or wearing things on your hair, switch it up. Don't wear a hat every single day, because the brim of the hat and things like that can also eventually wear into your locks over time and wear them down. My next tip is for people who go to locticians, and this is something that it's gonna be person by person, because not everybody feels comfortable to do this. But hopefully, if you do have a loctician, you have that relationship with them where you can be honest. Just tell them frank and honest if they're doing stuff too tight. If they're retightening too tight or retwisting too tight, let them know, be honest about it, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's gonna have to deal with your hair long term. You may not always have the same loctician, but unless you shave your head off or cut your hair or comb your locks out, you're gonna have the same set of locks and your scalp and those issues that follow you throughout your lock journey or progress. Your loctician may not always be a constant in your life, but your scalp and your hair will be, although they change. That's not what I'm saying. But my point is, be honest with your loctician. Make sure that they're paying attention to how tight they are doing your hair. Don't let them overdo it. Don't sit there quietly and just let them pull and tug. If it's hurting, let them know. All right, something else that you can do to help with thinning and hair loss is to do scalp massages, whether you do it with your hands, whether you get a motorized battery-powered massager, or if you get one of those denim rollers or whatever they're called with the little like metal needles that puncture your scalp a little bit to help with blood flow and stuff. You can get those and use those daily, weekly, or however often you feel like is recommended for your hair, your scalp, your hair loss or hair thinning need. Also, you can try using essential oils and mix that with the different combination of things to see what works over time with your scalp massages and your rolling and things of that nature. And my last tip is to evaluate and adjust your diet where possible. A lot of us are probably eating tons of processed food, tons of stuff that we know we shouldn't be eating. We probably have made so many New Year's resolutions to get these things out of our life, and it's not always easy, but evaluate your diet and make adjustments where possible. Even if you just go a little bit of time with something that you think might be contributing to, again, things that you put in your body affect your hair, skin, and your nails. So give it a try, change up your diet a little bit, make sure you get some movement in there, get some exercise, even if it's just walking, whatever your favorite type of exercise is. Keep it moving, keep it healthy, and let's keep these lock journeys going wonderfully. Thank you so much for tuning in. While you're here, hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button so that you can join the flock. And go ahead and click on one of these other videos that have shown up on the screen. I'll see you over there.